Ayes 108, noes 0.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing a brief interruption. If I could just have the members' attention for just a minute. I want to, first of all, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming back out in the rostrum. I didn't want to let the day go by without acknowledging a number of members who are probably, are certainly spending one of their last, at least the last day of a close of session with us in their capacity as members. So if you'd give me the opportunity, I just want to acknowledge them, and then Ms. Corwin may want to say a word or two as well. But we're going to see leaving the chambers as members, and I do want to acknowledge them. Angela Wozniak, who has been here and first elected in 2014, is leaving us at the end of this term. We want to acknowledge her contributions to the chambers and the people of the state of New York. I want to acknowledge my friend Phil Goldfeder, who's caused me to lose what little hair I have. I'm losing it at a faster pace because of my good friend Phil Goldfeder, first elected in 2011. Claudia Tenney.
You still have much more than me, Mr. Morelli.
Claudia Tenney is served the Mohawk Valley and the Utica region, first elected in 2010. Steve Katz, also elected in 2010, and no animal sounds, but Dr. Katz is going to be leaving us and returning to his veterinarian practice. Michelle Schimmel, who was elected in 2007, serves as our conference chair and makes announcements on our behalf daily, and we appreciate her long leadership. Janet Dupree, my dear friend, who was elected 10 years ago in 2006 and has served with great distinction as a friend to all. I also want to acknowledge, we'll get a chance to applaud all of them. Our dear friend Mrs. Robinson from the great county of Kings, elected in 2002. My dear friend Keith Wright, who unfortunately had to be called away to other responsibilities, was elected in 1992. And two of our longer-serving veterans, Jim Brennan, who unfortunately is recovering from complications to hip replacement, but is here in spirit. Jim was elected in 1984 and serves as chair of our Corps Committee. And Jim Tedesco is going to bring the spirit of 76 perhaps to another place. I don't know what's the spirit of 32 or something like that. But, Mr. Speaker, I know you join with me, and you may want to say a few words, as Ms. Corwin may. But it's always bittersweet when members who we serve with, who are dear friends, whose families we come to know, and are part of our family leave, and I didn't want the day to go by without acknowledging their great service to this chamber, to all of us, and to the state of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Morelli. Ms. Corwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Morelli, as well, for the opportunity. You know, it is really special to come here, as you all know, but maybe the people watching don't realize just how diverse of a group we have here. And everyone who's here in the room, and especially those who are leaving us today, all add something special and something unique. You know, I think of Mr. Katz with his veterinary business and his advocacy for the medical marijuana. Certainly added quite a dynamic. You know, and of course I think of Ms. Schimmel, and for many, many years, and her advocacy for gun control, and, you know, so many important issues that everyone brought to the table. And, you know, my being here for the last 8 years, I really enjoy being around all of you, and certainly we're all going to miss you here and on both sides of the island. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and your skills and your expertise, and good luck in whatever you're doing beyond.
Thank you, Ms. Corwin. So to our members who are going on to bigger and better things, it was mentioned that we are like family. I know we have our disputes and our battles, but in the end, we all tend to respect each other and believe in each other and work with each other. So you will be missed. Some, you know, as I look at the list here, some were mentors to me when I first got here, and some I guess I tried to be mentors to as well. But whatever it is and whatever avenue that you seem to want to go into or go down in the future, we just want to wish you the best of luck and say that we will really miss you, and thank you for your contribution to the people of the state of New York. Thank you all.
Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members have on their desks an A, a B, and a C calendar. I now move to advance the A, B, and C calendars.
On Mr. Morelli's motion, the A, B, and C calendar are advanced.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to identify the next 5 bills that we will take up in order. We're going to begin with Rules Report 303 on page 14 of the main calendar by Mr. Lenthal. We're going to follow it with calendar number 150 on page 30 by Mr. Kavanaugh. Following that, calendar number 261 on page 33 by Mr. Kavanaugh. Then calendar number 352 on page 39 by Mr. Cusick. And in this group, we'll follow that with calendar number 355 on page 40 by Mr. Cusick.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 10,083B, Rules Report Number 303. Mr. Lenthal, an act to amend the tax law and the economic development law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 94, noes 20.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 3389B, Calendar 150, Mr. Kavanaugh, an act to amend the election law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 103, noes 1.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 6975C, Calendar 261, Mr. Kavanaugh, an act to amend the election law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 89, noes 13.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 8608A, Calendar 352, Mr. Cusick, an act to amend the election law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect January 1st.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 103, noes 2.
The bill is passed.
Senate Assembly 501E, Calendar 355, Mr. Cusick, an act to amend the public health law and the insurance law.
On a motion by Mr. Cusick, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect April 1st, 2017.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 113, noes 0.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next two bills I'd like to take up are Rules Report 172 on page 10 of the main calendar by Mr. Kavanaugh. Follow that with Rules Report 266 on page 12 of the main calendar by Mr. Titone.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 8582B, Rules Report 172, Mr. Kavanaugh, an act to amend the election law.
An explanation is requested. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would provide for early voting in New York State before any special primary or general election. It would require county boards of elections throughout the state to provide one or more poll sites, depending on the size of the county, for voters to cast their votes in person before the election. It would provide for a period of a total of 7 days on which such votes could be cast, beginning the 8th day before the election and ending the 2nd day before election. So for a Tuesday election, that would mean beginning the Monday before the election and ending the Sunday before election. It has been redrafted since prior versions were considered on this floor to substantially reduce the cost and the number of poll sites that each county has to provide by tailoring the number to the number of active voters in the county.
Mr. McKevitt.
Will the sponsor yield for a few questions, please?
Mr. Kavanaugh, will you yield?
Happily, Mr.
Mr.
Speaker.
Kavanaugh yields.
You've mentioned we have actually debated similar bills just in the past, and I know you've made a number of revisions to them. I think probably the most noticeable change would be regarding the number of polling places per county. I think if I'm correct, an original version had required a minimum, I think, of 5 polling places per county, regardless of whether that county has 1 million people in it or whether the county has 5,000 people in it. Could you just go over to us how the requirements for the number of polling places is going to differ based upon that voter registration population?
Right. So the number of sites is based on full increments of 50,000 active voters, but with a minimum. All counties have to have at least one site. So basically, if you have fewer than 100,000 active voters in your county, you can satisfy the requirements of this law by a single early voting poll site. Generally, that will be the County Board of Elections offices accepting early voting ballots for a week before the election. There are about 50, the 50 smallest of the 62 counties in New York State will satisfy the requirements of this with a single poll site. They have the option of providing more if they choose to do so. The other substantial change is the period of voting. The previous bill had a different number of days depending on whether it was a primary or general election. But for example, for a general election, that bill required 164 hours of the poll sites being open. This one requires only 50 hours of poll sites being open for election day. So if you think of the number of poll sites being reduced and the number of hours being reduced, for a general election, the previous bill would have required 51,000 poll site hours throughout the state. This one requires 7,000. So we think we've reduced the amount of time and effort necessary by counties by about 85%. And I will note that that was done substantially in response to a careful review of the transcript and the many comments from the minority in this House. So we do sometimes try to accommodate those.
Let's say we have one of those larger counties, let's say which would have as many as 8 or 10 poll sites. We do have a couple of counties which have nearly 1 million, or probably more in registered voters, 800, 900,000. So it'll probably be a number of poll sites which would require maybe approximately 10 sites. If a county is required to have those number of sites, would a voter be able to go to any of those 10 sites within that county to vote, or would the county be able to differentiate certain geographic areas as where people would have to vote?
Yeah, so actually it's a good question, and it brings up one thing about the bill I neglected. The bill, irrespective of population, has a minimum of 1 site. It has a maximum of 7 sites. So counties could add additional sites above 7, but the maximum mandate is 7 sites in a county. There's no county that would be obligated to have more than 7 under this bill. And the default, the goal of the bill is that any voter in the county will be able to vote at any site, but there is a specific provision that says if that does not make sense because it is too difficult to make sure that the full range of ballot styles are available at each poll sites, for example, the county may designate some sites where people from a certain geographic portion of the county can vote, and other sites where people in a different part of the county can vote. So you're not obligated, if it's not practicable, to have every site in the county take every voter in the county.
And that's one point that I have, because again, some larger counties, you may have sign-in books of literally hundreds of thousands of people that to even just logistically do for one voter could take a long time just to literally pull out the book, get them to sign it, and get it back. So if there is, you're saying, an ability for them to make designations. I'll give you an example. In Nassau County, we have 3 towns, 2 cities. We could say if people within this township would have these 2 locations, another township, another location, again, just because of the sheer volume of, again, books you'd have to keep for people in order to vote then.
Right. So the county would have to come up with a rational plan that is announced ahead of time that designates the poll sites by May 1st, which is the normal date you have to designate regular poll sites. And provided that it's reasonable, you would not require that all voters be able to vote at all of the poll sites. I would note, though, that we just before this bill passed the electronic poll book law by my colleague Mike Cusick, which also would facilitate early voting greatly by providing that poll books do not have to be these big bound paper volumes, but could be done electronically as well.
And one other issue that I have, though, too, is regarding the general logistics, how this would work. Again, you have actually a rather limited period of time. It's 8 days before the general election day. Again, our election day this year, for the sake of example, will be Tuesday, November 8th. So then this cutoff period would then be on the Sunday, November 6th at that occurrence. There's one provision which I do note that you put in the bill, which says that you would allow the Board of Elections to establish procedures to ensure that persons who vote during the early voting period aren't permitted to vote subsequently in the same election. And here's the logistical problem. You have a county which has hundreds of thousands of people. A person now votes on Sunday. Now you have the election on Tuesday. And how do you logistically make sure that the person doesn't double vote, that they don't go and vote on Sunday, and then on Tuesday go back to the regular local polling place and vote again?
And I think generally speaking, electronic poll books, I mean, what you would have to do is produce a poll book that indicates if somebody has already voted in this election. And you'd effectively have to, that's not just an issue on election day, it's actually an issue on each day of the early voting period as well, right?
Right.
On Tuesday, you need to make sure somebody didn't vote on Monday. So this whole process, and most places that have done early voting have created more sophisticated ways of tracking voters. And the basic, the thing we call that is electronic poll books. It should not be necessary to reprint the entire volume of voters every day during this process. You update it electronically. You make sure that's done accurately and preferably in an automated way. And so the poll book is accurate in real time.
As far as these, again, I'm going to give, in this situation whereby, yes, the county Board of Elections office may serve as a polling site, which it already does for the most part when people are dealing with absentee ballots. It's already considered a polling place. You can't have any political buttons or literature in them at that point, so it's already the case. But I will now call these satellite locations, which has to be established. What locations will these satellite locations be established at? And I say, for example, many times, at least where I live, we have them usually in schools in many places. Right. And we've been getting a lot of concerns and a lot of opposition from some schools that some would say they just rather close down the schools because of security problems. If you're talking about a large county, where are you going to find these 5, 6, 7 other sites?
Okay. Again, I just would remind folks that most counties would not have this issue, at least as mandated by this bill, because about 50 of our counties will not have to have a second site. For those that do, places that have early voting often use traditional sites like schools and other places. Given that it's a 7-day period and it might be a kind of concentrated location, jurisdictions might have the option of renting a space where they can set up a large centralized poll site in a convenient location. These could be anything. I mean, some places have chosen shopping malls as places somebody might stop by at some point during the week before an election and might be able to cast a vote reasonably. They would be required to select poll sites under the same criteria that they now select poll sites. They have to be chosen in a manner that is not biased. It is approved by the commissioners of both parties and all of those things. But the answer to your question will vary pretty widely depending on, I would imagine in Manhattan we might have a poll site at the Javits Center or Grand Central Station. Other counties will probably have very different answers to that question.
And in these satellite locations, would there be the same requirements as to the people staffing the location that you find ordinary election day? For example, number of Republican inspectors, number of Democratic inspectors. Would those requirements that we have at your regular polling place also go to these satellite locations for the early voting period?
Yeah, the bill specifies that the staffing rule, the bill specifies various existing sections of the election that will also apply to early voting, and it specifies that the staffing rules apply to these sites as well.
Do we have any estimate as to what additional costs are going to be borne by our local Board of Elections because of this proposal?
Okay, so the first answer is this bill would not go into effect until after the current fiscal year.
Right.
So this is not a bill where we failed to provide the cost during the budget process that we've just been through. I don't have it's hard to do a clean estimate because in particular, for those 50 counties that need to do a new site, it's hard for us to know how their current staffing will differ from the staffing they'll do when they're taking early voters. We assume that presumably you would have additional staff on site. Some of us have discussed this and would like to see the state provide some funding for this, but that's a conversation I think we'll have in next year's budget. But again, we have cut the overall cost of this very, very substantially since the previous time we've debated this bill.
Right, but as the bill is written, it's not contingent upon the state doing funding. So if the state funding does not come through a budget appropriation, this would be a cost of the local board of elections.
There presumably all boards would have some costs. Some of them would also presumably have some savings. I mean, like roughly speaking, the same number of people are going to vote. You may reduce your costs on election day because you don't have to be prepared for the volume of voters in some places. You may currently in a busy election be hiring additional workers on a general election day to deal with a high volume of voters. If a third of your people are voting early, you might reduce some of those costs. But yeah, I would assume there is some that the way it washes out, there is some net increase in costs for most jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Ra,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield for a few questions?
will you yield, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Speaker.
Kavanaugh yields.
Thank you. So I just have some questions just about the kind of logistics of this for the local counties. And I know some of this, I don't know how much of it's contemplated in this bill, exactly how this is going to work or how much is going to be left to the local counties, boards of elections. But first off, is this going to be just a paper ballot? Are they going to use machines like they would on election day that are going to be, their ballots are going to be fed through? Can you give me a sense of what the logistics are?
Yeah, it doesn't alter the basic requirements of ballots and scanners. As you know, we've used in recent years optical scanners with a paper trail and a ballot for all of our special and general and primary elections that are subject to the election law. We know that we've made some exceptions to allow other kinds of machines like lever machines in certain elections. This bill doesn't speak to that, but as it stands and as the current election law stands, you would be using a standard paper ballot with a scanner that would be very similar to the ballot that you already have to produce for the election, which is only 8 days away when this process starts. And presumably you would configure the election somewhat differently. You'd have, lots of people from a much wider range of places coming to a single poll site. You're presumably going to have more machines available, and you need to have more ballot styles available, presumably as well.
Mr. Speaker, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing Mr. Kavanaugh.
Certainly, Mr. Ra. Members, conversations back under the eave, back away, so the members can be heard. Proceed.
Thank you. So would the same then be for, we have these requirements, obviously, for the machines that are supposed to assist the disabled in voting. Those same requirements would be in effect?
Yeah, this bill does not speak to that. So presumably the same rules that require accessibility of poll sites would apply to these poll sites.
Okay. All right. And then my other question was about, you mentioned to Mr. McKevitt this piece about the, whether it was feasible for the locality to provide ballots at any particular polling site so that anybody from the county could come and vote. Who is going to make that determination? Is it the local board of elections? Is the state board of election involved? And just in terms of the practicality of providing that number of ballots, as we can imagine, we all have, within the districts we represent, some of us might have 3 or 4 different state senators that overlap with us, other local offices, different towns that are going to have different other candidates that are going to be on the ballots. So presumably you could be talking about, in a larger county, I would say potentially hundreds of different ballots that you might have to have at a polling site. So who's going to make that determination?
So the board would require, irrespective of the size of the county, and this issue of particular types of ballots, the board would be required to specify its early voting poll sites by May 1st, which is the same date they specify all the other poll sites each year. The board would produce a plan. Either the plan is all sites in our county can handle all ballot styles, or people from this part of the county should go to poll site 1, and people from this other part should go to poll site 2. You could have a combination of those. You could, for example, say at the county board of elections, anybody in the county can come vote, but the other 6 sites are geographically specific. As long as that is clear and it is communicated, there's a provision for communicating clearly which poll sites people are eligible to go to. The county board would come up with that plan. The state board of elections would review it, but the expectation is that this would be done in a bipartisan way in each county.
Okay, and then one other question, I guess, in that regard. I know that, we've heard from many of us, I'm sure, from our local boards of elections, just about the cost of printing all of the ballots. We have a requirement in the law of what percentage of the number of registered voters determining how many ballots they have to print. And I know this isn't like just running something off a copy machine. There's special paper and printing involved to make sure that the machine will properly process them and all of that. So is there any, requirement or direction in terms of how many ballots these polling sites would have to have?
No, the provisions of the election law as to how many ballots you must print do not change. Early voting ballots would not be different ballots than election day voting ballots. So presumably the current provisions of the election law that specify how many votes, how many ballots you have to print would apply, and you would begin to use those ballots during the early voting period. So there should not be additional printing costs to implement this. Having said that, you and I may agree that those provisions that require counties to provide and then also store ballots for significant periods after the election, unused ballots, should be reconsidered. I personally think those requirements are excessive at the moment, and that would be an opportunity for cost savings. This bill does not either impose new costs in terms of printing or give any relief in terms of printing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Mr. Kavanaugh, will you yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Kavanaugh yields.